All right, we are moving on now to Jay Graham, who will continue the theme of the Apple IIe Card and talk about ProDos boot partition creation.
Give me a second here. All righty. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, I will move this out here. Yeah, as Ron and Steve said, what I wanted to do today was talk about configuring a ProDos boot partition on the internal SCSI disk. So the agenda on mine, I'm not really going to dive deep into the workings of the Apple IIe card either. Ivan did and I have a link to his presentation at the 2009 KansasFest, where he did a very, very good job of that. Ivan Drucker. So I'm just going to basically give you a brief overview of it, a few interesting facts. And then most of the time, what I want to do here is I recorded a video on my LC475 that basically will allow, will show you how to walk through the process of doing the, or creating the ProDos boot partition on there. So what is the Apple II card? This is it. It's the Apple II emulator card. It was released in March of 1991. And as Ron said in his, it was, so basically these schools made a huge investment. All of the schools, made a huge investment in Apple II software. So what what Apple wanted to do was kind of say, okay, the Macintosh, is coming out. We want the schools to adopt the Macintosh, but we don't want you to throw away all the Apple II software. So we'll make this card that'll fit in the LC, the LC slot compatible computers. And there's a slew of them there. It's funny because Apple did not want to call this an emulation card because of the stigma that went along with its prior emulation cards. So they actually named this the Apple II option board. And it was interesting when I worked at the University of Pittsburgh in our PC center when these were out, and we were actually selling a lot of these, through the PC center. And there was, interestingly enough, there was a 2GS version of this planned, but it was deemed too costly to produce. So the hardware requirements, it's simple. As Ron mentioned, you need a Mac that supports the Apple IIe card. You need a SCSI hard disk or equivalent, the Apple IIe option board, the elusive Y cable that he showed, and optionally a 5 1/4 inch disc or a 3 1/2 inch uni disc. And I say that's optional because with this ProDos partition on the hard drive, there are other ways, if you don't have that elusive Y cable, to get software on there. So the hardware that I'm going to be using today is a Macintosh LC475 that I recapped with 16 megs of RAM, a blue SCSI card device, and I'll have 3 volumes on that. I have a VGA to HDMI up converter so that I was able to display the video, and then the Apple IIe option board. And I do have the Y cable on there, although I did not use the Y cable in this, in this video. Software requirements, the Apple HD Setup 7.3.5, the patched version. And I'll talk a little bit about that. There's an unpatched version and a patched version. I think it's, when you launch ResEdit and you change 2 bytes in the code. The difference is the patched version will allow you to create those ProDos partitions on non-Apple hard drives, where the unpatched version, you had to use an Apple hard drive. Obviously, the software for the Apple IIe card, which is the installer 2.2.1, and then the update, which is 2.2.2.d. And I have those on a net install, and you'll see that when, in the video. And then a 3 1/2 inch ProDos 2.4.2 discs, one of John Brooks's discs, that's a 3 1/2 inch version. The 5 1/4 will work if you have the Y cable. And this is simply, what the software looks like. So some of the helpful hints: using a hard disk is on pages 3 through 11 and Appendix B, pages 146 through 153 in the user's guide. You need to use the patch version of the SC setup utility, especially if you're using one of the SCSI SD card emulators today. Although, the Blue SCSI is supposed to emulate a quantum 40 meg drive, but I haven't actually tried the unpatched version on it yet. The boot drive must have, the ProDos file system enabler on it to use it. And that comes with the Apple IIe software. You also need to start with a blank drive. Trying to finagle a ProDos partition on there when everything else is on there is difficult. Although I haven't tried the FWB disk tools yet, but that may work. I don't know. And you need to use a backup disk to preserve your data. Using the HDSC setup, you're limited to 232 meg ProDos partitions. Again, FWB may allow you to have more. And do not copy the ProDos files onto the HFS partition, as it'll add the resource fork on the Macintosh, making them unusable. Okay, so the high-level steps, basically you back the Macintosh hard drive up, you partition it, with up to 2 ProDos partitions, not 4, sorry. Restore the Macintosh hard drive, install the Apple IIe Card software, and then format and use the ProDos partitions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show a video here, and I'm actually going to walk through, the video as I do the things here. There was the bong. I'm doing that manually, by the way, the bong. I couldn't record the video or the audio over this. So this is my LC 475. This is the system 755 image, 55 image booting up here. And you'll see it'll take a little bit to boot up. This video is about 16 minutes long. So although it's going to seem like it's longer as this boots up here, because as we're waiting for stuff. So I'll try to annotate what's going on here. So it's going to technically here, it's going to boot up off of the Blue SCSI. It's going to have 3 hard drive partitions on there. I have a full system 755 install. I have the Apple Legacy Recovery CD, and then I have a backup volume on there. Now I'm doing this as 3 images on the Blue SCSI card. But these could be physical drives. It could be a physical hard drive, a physical CD-ROM, and a backup, an external backup hard drive attached to it. So the first thing that we want to do, you saw the backup image just blank there, and it was big enough to hold all of the files on here. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically select everything on the 755 full drive and copy it over to the backup drive. Now, I did speed this video up. This Blue SCSI is not this fast, but I did speed the video up so we didn't have to sit through all of the 991 files and folders copying over there. So once the software gets copied over to my backup disk over here, the next thing that I'm going to do is go up into the control panel and then set that backup hard drive as the startup volume. So I'm going to do that now. Under control panels, overshot the startup disk a little bit and bring the startup disk. And now what I want to do is back up or start up from the backup volume here. So I'm simply going to go ahead and do that and then go ahead and do a restart. And here comes the LC475 backing up or booting up from the backup image here. Now, the reason that I'm booting up off of the backup image is I'm going to blow away the 7.5.5 full image. Again, there may be ways to do this without doing that. I could not find any or get any to reliably work. So this, to me, was the fastest way I could think of doing this. So now you see the backup image will boot, the Apple Legacy Recovery CD, and the System 755 full images there. So we have the backup drive. So what I'm going to do on the backup drive now, expand the window here a little bit, is that I'm going to run the HDSC setup patch version of 7.3.5. And I'm going to navigate around to the right drive. It's not the backup volume. It's the System 5.5 full. And now I'm going to partition this. So the first thing I'm going to do in the partition manager is blow away the Macintosh partition and remove that. You may have to unlock it. Mine's unlocked here. So I'll go ahead and blow that away. And you'll see the Mac driver is still on there. And so I'm going to, click done at that point. And it says that the custom partitioning is done. So now I'm going to do the same thing, come back into the custom partition, and this is where I'm going to make my 2 ProDOS partitions and my Macintosh partition. So first to do the ProDOS partition, and I'm going to make it be the maximum. And you see it conveniently lists a maximum that the ProDOS partition it can be there. So 32767, and then come over and click the OK button. And I'm just going to name that PDOS 1. You can name it whatever you want, but I'm just going to name this one PDOS 1 for ProDOS 1. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and you'll see now that the first ProDOS partition is created. So now I'm going to create the second ProDOS partition. Same method you do here. You select ProDOS 32767, click OK, and then you'll see, I'll name this one PDOS 2. Be very creative here. And I won't put the space in this time, apparently. So I'll click OK there. And this one is called PDOS 2. So now I have my 232 meg ProDOS partition. So now I'm going to create my Macintosh volume. Notice that there's not an option for the ProDOS on there. That's why you're only allowed 2. It takes that option off the table at this point. So now I'm going to essentially make the rest of my partition of that 755 a Macintosh partition. I'll click OK here. And now it's going to mount those disks. It'll take a second here. And you'll see that it's system 7.5.5 full still because that was in the driver. So I am going to click done here. And you'll actually see over on the right that the 2 ProDOS partitions are going to mount, and they look like little floppies at this point. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here with these ProDOS partitions, and I'm going to actually format them. Technically, you don't have to do this. It depends on the version of the system that you're running. System 755, I wouldn't have to do this. Other versions of the systems get a little finicky if you don't erase them and when you copy files, they won't let you copy files to them. So I just figured I'm going to go ahead and format them at that point. It only takes a second. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is take all of the stuff back from the backup disk. That's everything Macintosh, and I'm going to go ahead and drag that over to the System 755 full that has been repartitioned now, sans 64 megabytes for the 232 meg ProDOS partitions. So it's going to copy everything back over to that. And the last 4 files will take a little bit here. So to recap what we've done at this point, we've taken the disk, we've backed everything up to a backup disk, we've made that backup disk the startup disk, we've started up, we blew away the partition on the original disk, created 2 32 meg ProDOS partitions, the rest of it is a Macintosh partition, and now we are ready to install the software here. So the next thing that I'm going to do here is, and I don't know why I was taking so long in the video to do this, is I'm going to put in one of the ProDOS 2.42 disks in the 3.5-inch drive on the RC. And then I'm just going to drag copy all of those files over to both of the ProDOS disks here. I really only need one, but I'll drag them over to both of them at this point. So what this is doing is it's taking that ProDOS 2.4.2 image on that 3.5-inch disk that was inserted actually into the 3.5-inch disk on the Macintosh. And now I'm copying all the ProDOS files over there so that both PDOS 1 and PDOS 2 will be bootable when I'm ready to do this. And this will take a little bit. So So again, you know, the ProDos partitions are on there. We have the Macintosh partition ready to go, and we have the backup ready to go. Now we're not gonna. I'm gonna go ahead and eject the disk there. I don't have a disk eject sound. Sorry. So it's going to go ahead and eject the disk. And now I'm going to go ahead and I think what the next step here is I'm going to go and restart the computer. So I'm going to go back up. I'm going to do another restart. Oop. Oh my gosh. Went back to the beginning here. Hold on. See where we're at. Let's see. Where was I at here? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to make the System 755 disk the startup disk at this point. And then I'm going to go ahead and restart. I'm just not going to click the mouse at this point. All right. So at this point, the Macintosh is going to reboot again. And now the System 7.5.5, full disk will be the boot disk again. And then at this point, the next step after this is going to be to install the Apple IIe Card software at this point. Now, what you will see at this point, you will see the Mac is going to have to go and rebuild the desktop at this point, because I've drag copied everything off of the System 755. I've repartitioned it, and then I drag copied everything back. So as it goes and it mounts this, it should rebuild the desktop here. Okay, it's coming up. Takes a little while. Yeah, actually, it didn't rebuild the desktop on that one that time. So sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. So we don't need the Apple Legacy Recovery CD or the backup. So I'm going to actually dismount those here. And now I'm going to come up to my System 755 full, and I've copied onto here the network install or the net install, which comes on the Apple Recovery system. The Apple IIe card, it actually has a net install script on there. So I'm going to go ahead and run that now. And this is actually going to mount the two drives on here and install the Apple IIe software. I think I might have edited out the desktop rebuild in the order of time here. So now it'll basically launch both of those disks. This will launch the Apple IIe software installation. We'll go ahead and click OK here. Make sure we're installing it on the System 7.5.5 full, and it's going to go ahead and install the Apple II software off of the hard drive using the net installer. Now you can continue if you wanted to, install anything more. I'm going to quit there. And then when I do quit, the network script is going to dismount both of those virtual floppies. So I'm going to remount the 2.2.2 D1 image here, and copy, just copy the startup image there, or the Apple IIe startup. Give it a second here. The drive should mount. I'll go ahead and open that up and just copy the IIe startup application over to the System 755 full install. And yes, I do want to overwrite it. So it's going to copy that. And now I got to reboot to install the Apple II, ProDos file enabler on here. So clean up a little bit here, closing some of the windows, and close that window. And now go ahead and restart. Okay, now one of the things you'll notice when we come up on the restart here is that because of the Apple II, first of all, you will see the Apple II file, ProDos enabler load across the bottom there. And the other thing that you'll notice is that the two ProDOS icons have changed from an Apple II flop or basically an Apple IIe floppy to an Apple IIe to a slightly different Apple IIe logo here. And here come all the inits, and you'll see there's the Apple II, the ProDOS enabler. Yeah, it takes forever when you're watching these. So it should be booting up. And like I said, now when you see the icons of the ProDOS volumes here, they're going to look slightly different. That's how you know that the enabler loaded, or the init loaded rather. So now they look like Apple II in there. And of course, the other two images came back because I'm using a blue SCSI. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the Apple IIe startup program with my two ProDOS volumes on there. And this will launch the Apple IIe. And here it comes. And now at this point, the Apple IIe is not going to boot because it's trying to boot from the 3.5-inch floppy that has nothing in it at this point. So I got to use the Command Control Escape or Command Control Left bracket option, come into the Apple IIe option panel, move the ProDOS volume over to slot 5 drive 1 as a smart drive. And the startup I'm going to leave as scan. So it will scan slot 6 where it won't find anything. Well, slot 7 first, 6 where it won't find anything. And then 5 drive 1 is the ProDOS volume that is actually booting off of the, internal Macintosh hard drive at this time. And you'll see, I'll go into ADT Pro here. You'll see the two RAM drives. You'll see PDOS 01 and PDOS 02, and they're both 32 meg partitions. One's at slot 5.1, the other one's at slot 2.1. Okay, so now at this time, I can use whatever, my favorite copy program is, ADT Pro, whatever I want to do to copy files over on there. So if I want to, make one of these volumes the total replay volume, could use ADT Pro to copy that and make it the total, replay volume, or copy any of the files over there, and set them up. Now, if you have the elusive Y cable at this point, you can hook up your 5 1/4 or your Unidisc off of that. But again, you can use the 3.5-inch disc on the Apple II, the Apple II, or the LC rather, the Macintosh, to load your Apple II floppies in there and your ProDOS floppies in there. Okay, so now I'm going to just go ahead and show you what one of the ProDOS discs look like. You'll see it looks like a Macintosh interface, but there's, all of the familiar ProDOS files on there. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and shut down. And that should be the video. Whoops. And then the last thing I just wanted to show is here's a couple of resources that are very good for the Apple IIe card. There's David and Steve's blog, a lot of information on there. They even have some of the images for the SCSI to SD and the blue SCSI cards. There's a Wikipedia article in there, and I'll throw these up in the Discord channel afterwards. Phil Beasley's FAQ pages still exists in the Internet Archive. And this is Ivan's KFest 2009 presentation, which is an awesome overview of the card. And then the Apple II Owner's Guide is up there as well. Okay, so that is my presentation. I think I have turn my video on here, and I think I have a few minutes left for questions. Any questions?
There were a lot of things scrolling by in the chat, but I'd have to look back to see where some of them were.
Okay. Oh, how tough one of the questions is, how tough is it to use the SCSI SD versus the blue SCSI? I have both of them, and the SCSI to SD works perfectly, but it is a little harder to use. The blue SCSI is relatively easy. Now, it's lacking some of the features that the SCSI to SD has, but it is a simplicity is the ultimate sophistication device, where the blue SCSI is very, very simple at that point. I am trying to look for some of the questions here. How much time do I have left? I have about 4 minutes left.
4 minutes, yes.
Let's see here.
There's someone, hey Jay, there's a question about, was I correct in that you're working on a PCB breakout replacement?
Oh, yes. Yeah. What I am actually doing that. When Ron and I talked, so we made sure that we weren't overlapping in each other's video. So I actually am going to try to do that. I have the connectors here, and I'm going to actually try to build a PCB board. The one thing that is awesomely hard to find is a PCB mounted female DB19 connector, the 19-pin floppy connectors. There's some on eBay right now. They're going for about $9 a piece. Oddly enough, the 26-pin high density connector is used for a lot of industrial machinery. That is not as hard to find, and it's a lot more reasonable. But yeah, this 19-pin connector that I have here, I'll show it up to the camera. It is really hard to find. So even if I just do the 26-pin connector, so you can use the joystick on there. If I can't find those DB19s, the DB9s are in a plethora of supplies. So yeah, I'm going to take a run at that, and I'll let everybody know when that comes back. Any other questions? I'm not really coordinated to read the chat and talk at the same time. Not really. Oh,
a comment about if you don't want to end up with a GS style resource forks in your ProDOS volume when copying in Mac originated files, you might have to change the file type first, the Mac file type to text. And Ivan has a tool for a drag and drop tool for unforking files, he mentions.
Exactly. Thank you, Ivan. I meant to mention that in my presentation. I forgot. Thank you for that. I needed it. Oh, how would you remove a total replay image onto one of the hard drives? I started doing this. It takes a long time, but you can use ADT Pro to do it. And Ron has a video about that, I think.
All right. Anything else? Do we have other questions?
Any questions? If not, I'll be over into the Discord. If people want me to make these SCSI, the blue SCSI images available that I did for the demo, I'll do that as well. Can make them available and give everybody a URL to that.
That would be great.